think we need to take one more look at the co-main event. I really do. When you're looking at Dominick Cruz versus Henry, first off, you have a story here. You have everything that Henry got credit for doing for the flyweight, saving the division, keeping it around, making it interesting, everything that Henry did, and he did do it. Dominick had already done, but he did it at bantamweight. Dominick is the one that made bantamweight interesting. I think that Uriah Faber gets a lot of credit for that too. I think the two of them together and their rivalry. But those guys really elevated that division. They truly did. And Dominick along the way, I mean, he had fought Mighty Mouse before Mighty Mouse was Mighty Mouse. Dominick fought and beat Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse goes down, takes over the world. I'm just offering you, Dominick did not have an easy path, even though he didn't have all the eyes on him at all the time. He's the one that had to bring the eyes to that division. So Dominick has been there, done that in terms of saving a division. Now Henry's done the same thing. There's a story there. These guys are both from Arizona. There's a story there. These guys used to be teammates in the same room to some extent. I don't know how much they ever touched each other or how long Henry was in that room. I know Henry was still competitive wrestling at the time, but making his way, dipping his toe into MMA when Dominick was there full time. I've never heard a story from anyone that was there that watched them spar or drill or do live goes together. I haven't heard that, which leads me to believe perhaps that level of training didn't happen. Henry would have been around 21 or 22, would not have been a competitive fighter yet, just somebody who wanted to be, and Dominick would have been the champion of the world, probably multiple times over by then. So there's good reason to believe that they stayed separated, but I think that you still have a story there. And when you do look at that fight, good news, bad news, okay? If you're a Henry fan, let's start with the bad news as I see it. If you take Henry at his absolute best, go back to any performance, go boom, that was Henry, that was your best night. You take Dominick at his absolute best. Go back, watch all the Dominick fights. This was your top performance. I believe you will be forced to come to the conclusion that Dominick Cruz is the better fighter. I really believe you're going to have to come to that. Here's the bad news. If you're a Dominick fan, the one thing that Henry has been very consistent at doing and showing us is very meaningful gains in between fights. I don't know over the short term that you could say the same about Dominick. I don't know you could say anything about Dominick because in the short term, he hasn't been in there in almost 3.5 years. So you do run into the question of, okay, the best Dominick I've seen beats the best Henry I've seen. One guy's opinion, but it's mine. But is that the Henry that we're going to get? Is that the same Henry that we're going to get? Because one thing that he has shown us is improvement between the fights. It comes with youth. It comes with some of that motivation. A potential counter to that argument is that Henry was out for a little bit with his own arm injury. I think a lot of people are forgetting that. So much is being made that Dominick has been out for 3 years. Fair point. That's a long time out. Henry's been out a year. That's a fair point, and that's a long time out. That's a long time out, particularly when you had to go through an arm injury. That's a very real thing because now you're not talking about being out, but you were in the gym and you were staying active and you were getting your miles in and getting your lifts in. Now, you're talking about being out. You're talking about having to sit at home. I don't know how long that was. Was that 3 months? Was that 6 months? But I think that it is relevant if you're going to look at this match and attempt to handicap it ahead of time and say that Henry is making too big of gains and therefore he's the unknown and therefore this is a clear shot vision. I've even heard that if Dominick gets an upset, that will be the biggest upset in UFC history. I'm just not seeing it that way. Guys, I've had egg on my face before. If you want to know how to make a lot of money, do what a lot of people do, which is listen to me and blindly bet the opposite. I am not a wonderful predictor, but I am a good guy to listen to on history. You could go to Google or you could ask me. I just remember these things very well. This is a stylistic problem for Henry. Henry on paper is a much better wrestler, no question. Nobody's going to argue that. Henry doesn't use his wrestling a lot. And I don't think it's because he doesn't want to. I think it's because Henry has a hard time judging that distance at times. Whenever Henry is setting you up for his wrestling, he will do it off of offense and then come into a clinch. One of the better times to use your wrestling is when you're defending. Make the opponent miss, change elevation. That's a great time to close the distance. Henry does a very good job with rolling with defense, but he doesn't do a great job of firing it back at all times. Look, I'm being critical, but you have to be critical. This guy's a 3-time world champion. It's very hard to find things to make suggestions for, but it is a fair analysis to say that he does not go out there and overpower people with his wrestling. He will mix it up with you first. I don't know that Dominick Cruz, who has length, who has footwork, who understands range, is the guy that Olympic wrestling champion wants to mix it up with. I just look at this fight. I would not be surprised if Dominick won. I would not be surprised if Henry won. I would be surprised if you had a dominant performance by either guy. I see a long, drawn-out night. I see 25 minutes. I see 25 minutes of fun, of trading of positions, of trading of combinations, of each guy grabbing some rounds. I think we got a close co-main event on our hands.